Let's call the meeting to order. This is the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Architecture Engineering Examiner. It's currently taking place in Conference Room 1A of the David Crockett Tower, 500 James Robertson Parkway, Nashville, Tennessee. And notice that this board meeting was posted on the board website on June 4, 2013. With that say, may I have the roll call, please?
Susan Ballard.
Here.
Hal Balthrop. Wilson Borden. Robert Campbell.
Present.
Jerome Hadley.
Here.
Philip Lim.
Here.
Bill Lockwood.
Here.
Rick Thompson.
Here.
Frank Wagster.
Here.
Ricky Versailles.
Here.
Alton Heathcote.
Al Balthrop rules.
Stephen King. You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. We have guests in the room here. We have Miss Candice Tolles with the TSPE and the ACEC. And also, where's David? David's here, and we'll recognize him in a minute again. Any announcement? Hearing none. Review the agenda for any changes or addition to the agenda. Do I need to have a motion for the consent agenda?
I would move that we accept the agenda as published.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the agenda as published. Do I have a second on that?
So moved.
Second by Rick Thompson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. All right, now we come to the best part. We want to present emeritus certificate to David Sherman. David, you want to come up here? Do you have any choice? I don't know.
He's got the camera.
It's on. Hey, how long did it take you to get from
It's
there?
got to go on the website.
Did it on 85,
Oh, well, it takes him like 6 hours.
Philip.
He's not incredible. David, I want to have the pronunciation always good when you go real fast. To all who shall see this, present know ye that whereas David M. As a member of this, thanks for your help, man. The State Board of Architecture, is this in the State Board of Architecture and Engineering Examiner during the years.
I call this congratulations, you've been kicked off the board.
There we go.
Ride for 8.5 years, and it was a pleasure getting back to the.
Thank you for all you do.
Let's back up a little bit. I think we have some guests here. Nathan, you brought somebody with you? Or? Nathan, you want to introduce yourself? We want to recognize you.
My name is Danny Romano. I'm an ex
knows he knows we're a tough group of people to deal with. And we have a young lady over there. Do you mind introduce yourself? Huh?
I'll rescue that in a moment.
Thank you and welcome to the board. I want to make sure you are acknowledged. With that said, we have the minutes for the April 2013 meeting. Hope the board member has a chance to review it.
I would
On
move
page
to-
32 on your iPad.
It's 32.
I would move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 2013 meeting by Bill Lockwood.
Second.
Second by Susan. Any discussion? Changes? No. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right. On next is the staff complaint. I think it's what 30.
Page 37 is where that begins. These are all complaints where the respondent was disciplined in another jurisdiction. The discipline was less than a suspension or revocation, so in accordance with board policy, we issued a letter of caution and recommend closure. And you can vote on these as a group.
All right, do I hear a motion?
So move to accept the staff's recommendation on these matters.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, John, thank you. Next is the NCIDQ examination presentation. Is that going on now?
It's scheduled for 1:30.
We can come back.
Yeah.
Let's do the professional report. We're going to start. Miss Candy Tolles.
As the chairman said, I'm Candy Toller, Executive Director of two. I do speak highly of Denise Lawrence. I don't think there's ever been a time when I didn't. We appreciate her help at the Capitol, and we appreciate the help of her in working on the issue with the State Fire Marshal and building codes, especially. I have a few things to report. We are doing something really interesting with TDOT with regard to the PE exam review course for the civil exam. We're offering it at TDOT came to us and asked for, and if we could do this, we're offering it at the region headquarters where we'll have a live program in Nashville, and it will be simulcast to all of the TDOT offices if we have people signed up to take the classes in the other parts of the state. So we're broadening our reach to TDOT and non-TDOT people across the state. So we'll be, I hope, helping improve the quality of the exam results for the well, I keep a list of people who have asked me about it. TDOT has already spread the word among government employees, and I will ask John for the list of people. I already have the list of people who failed the exam last year, and another list of people in addition. It's too early to get the list of people who have applied to take the and if they haven't been approved by the board, they can at least know about it in advance.
They may want to actually take the review course a year or so in advance. I knew people that studied for 2 years before they took the exam.
Well, and, I'm hoping that people who know people like that will pass on what I'm going to distribute in a couple weeks. Okay, so the deadline is this week, so, okay, that'd be great.
And this is question, who's teaching all those courses?
Well, it depends on which section you're talking about, Philip. I've got 8 different people scheduled right now. Adam Price is teaching steel design and concrete I could go through most
So,
of
no, I guess my intent of the question was, are all these professional engineers teaching them
Yes,
there? Okay, so it's PE teaching it. Okay. Thank you.
yes.
One quick thing. First of all, thank you all and thank TDOT, because I think this is something that really helps us in our mission to try to get people licensed, and I think that's a great step by TDOT reaching out and TSP and being able and ready to step in. And I would also, if there's any way to get those lists, just encourage that, or and I don't know if we can get people that have passed the FE. I don't want to create another thing, but something that we can get the word out, because I think that is very beneficial to people that have looking for those review classes to know that that's an option, and I think that's a great option. Glom, I don't want to do that, but if it's something that's just a list that we can get, once you get a little bit of momentum that people understand that, then it's not.
Okay, I'll send you an email, John. Thank you. Okay, good ideas. On our agenda for the annual meeting on September 13th, you're going to do an hour. John has committed to it. I don't know if you guys are going to let him stand up there all by himself, but an open forum is a part of that. And a fun part of it is that the students in colleges and universities will be there on that day, on September 13th, and sit in on that session, we hope. It is a Friday, and it's even Friday the 13th, but it's going to be a lucky Friday the 13th. We have submitted names to the governor, and the governor's office has requested that we submit some more names, specifically those of females. So I'm in the process of encouraging some females to be interested.
Us knowing everybody.
And that's all I have in my report, unless you have some questions. I do appreciate your guidance on going back to the FE folks.
Thank you, Ken. All right, Nathan, you want things?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Nathan Ridley again. I represent the landscape architects. It's nice to be with you. Legislative update. Our legislative friends have gone home for the year, and you see the people behind me are very happy about that. And they finished as early, the last time they finished this early, which this year was on April the 19th, Governor McWhorter was gearing up his re-election campaign in 1990. So that elections are important and who governs is important, and both of the speakers are. This is a new normal. Kind of the impact on my client and others, obviously, and to a certain extent on y'all, is you really have to work ahead. And John's already and your staff have already started on this. If you have an initiative for the 2014 legislative session, you need to be getting your ducks in a row. So you need to be getting your ducks in a row. So I would encourage. Let's see, Kate Hendricks is our executive director for the landscape architects, and it's hard. Mrs. Ridley reminds me often that it's harder being a woman because your name doesn't change, stay put if you get married. And Kate has recently gotten married, and she is now Kate Horton. So I think y'all have a good email address. Contact information is the same, but she's updated that, obviously. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but we have a new logo. And I'm not a design professional, so I didn't think it was a big deal when they created a committee to set up a new logo for the landscape architects, but you would not have imagined the drafts and the redrafts and the redrafts and the redrafts, but they're very excited and it looks very nice. We'll have our quarterly conference call next week with our executive committee, and last but not least is our annual meeting will be in Memphis, Mr. Chairman, in September on the 26th and 27th, and we're excited about being in the western part of the state this year. Like most groups, we kind of rotate around in different regions of the state to make travel easier for folks. And that's all I have, and happy to respond to your questions or comments or observations.
Well, and I'm from Memphis, so I welcome you all to Memphis. Look forward to.
Thank you, sir.
It's a great city.
We've been there several times before, and the times I've been, we've always had a good time in Memphis. So
Make sure to spend money.
we shall. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mhm. All right, we have Don.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Baltimore, representing the Tennessee Interior Design Coalition, and glad to see your new conference room here. I have very little to report, but I certainly want to second everything that Nathan said about the legislature adjourning. Yes, we're glad that they did adjourn. Finally, it was very fast, very compressed legislative session, which made it hard on, I think, on everyone, legislators, lobbyists, staff. Major plans at this time for any legislature or rulemaking proposals. As far as we continue to meet, the American October 4th in Nashville. So that's my report.
Any questions, Don? Thank you for the report. I don't see Connie here, so. 130 is not here yet. Can we move on to legal case, or Robert?
I think we can go ahead and do the presentation because they were going to log in a little bit early in case we were prepared
Okay.
before 1:30. So I'll go ahead and do it now if you'd like.
Could I, excuse me, John, could I say one thing? Connie's not here. She's she's probably planning for the AIA convention that's in Nashville in August, first week of August. And Connie will be retiring on, her retirement party is the 16th of August at 4 p.m. So if anybody's around and want to come by to the convention center, it's going to be fun. So Candy, I'm sure she's involved in some kind of trickery on that. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're sorry.
That didn't work, did it? Try it again.
Welcome to GoToMeeting, online meetings made easy. Please enter your access code followed. You entered 736491634. If this is correct, press 1. Re-enter your to enable audio controls. Please enter your audio pin. There are 1 other callers on the call.
Ken?
Yes, John.
Hello. The board is here.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And and right on time. That's an impressive board meeting.
Yes, isn't it? We have a great chair.
Excellent. Are you ready for me?
Yes, we are. Right? Are we ready,
Okay,
Mr.
we'll
Chair?
just dive right in
Yes,
because I
sir. Go
know
ahead.
time is very valuable. And first, thank you for the invitation from the board to get a chance to talk to you. This is a really great opportunity, and especially thanks Susan and John for helping organize this and put this all together. As 2013 is a exciting time for the NCIDQ examination, it's a great way for us to talk directly to you about the exam and some of the things that are happening. But before we kind of get into maybe some of the actual specifics of the exam, I did want to start with some eligibility things that are happening in 2013 with the exam. There are many pathways towards eligibility to the NCIDQ examination, and that really starts with that CETA accredited bachelor's or master's degree, and CETA is the Council for Interior Design Accreditation. But we do offer a pathway for those in non-CETA accredited degrees. We do just dive a little bit further into that education by reviewing the transcript to make sure it's meeting all those requirements. We do also offer a second degree in interior design, or those master's programs. And we do have an eligibility route for some associate's degrees as well. And then we have recently in the last year clarified an eligibility route for those interior designers with a NAB accredited architecture degree. So as you can see, there are many pathways towards that eligibility to the NCIDQ examination. In 2013, one of the things that we have introduced is a opportunity for recent graduates to sit for the fundamentals section of the NCIDQ exam. We love acronyms in the built environment, and so we've gotten to know that as IDFX. We see many great opportunities in that, not only for the NCIDQ examination, but for also the regulatory boards as well. We hear so often that once a student graduates and gets out into the working world, they get lost. And so we see this as a great opportunity for us to introduce them into this career path to becoming a professional interior designer, as well as being a registered interior designer in their jurisdiction. Once they graduate, they build on that, what they learned in school, and move on into that work experience component. As a professional practice exam, it's very different from a university exam, as I know all of you know, having sat for a professional exam. It's really about how you apply that knowledge that you learned in school. And once a candidate completes that exam, the experience component, they're ready to complete their application and sit for the professional section of the exam, as well as the practicum design section of the exam. And so what we've nicely done is spread out that process. It's going to be more economically beneficial for the candidate to be able to spread that process out financially, as well as keeping them in the loop of really becoming, a registered interior designer. Some important deadlines that are always important to remember, that I always like to tell everybody as you have exposure to the NCIDQ examination. The deadline for applicants is June 3rd for the fall administration and December 2nd for the spring 2014 application deadline. What we are doing for those recent graduates, because that's hard for them to get their transcript by that June 3rd deadline, we're extending the deadline for IDFX only candidates till August 1st as well as February 1st. So it's just 2 months later, which will really give them a great opportunity to start their exam experience. So now let's dive into the specifics of the exam, because I think that's really what we want to show you, how the NCIDQ examination is built and what it's actually testing. As a professional practice exam, it tests what an interior designer does every day. And I guess it's really important for me to be very clear that the exam tests 100% health, safety, and welfare. We have no history questions or furniture type questions. Those are very important things in the design world, but we do rely on somebody's education to have gotten those components, as they're not directly related to health, safety, and welfare. The multiple choice exams, something else that's exciting that's happened in 2013 is that we've introduced the multiple choice exams in computer-based testing. I know a lot of you are familiar, whether it's through the LEAD process or through the ARE process for online testing. Here it's very similar, where IDFX and IDPX are offered at those Prometric test centers, which has some great benefits as well, of allowing us to offer them for a testing window rather than just 1 day, 2 times a year. We actually offer it for an 8-day testing window for twice a year. So that's 16 days that somebody has an opportunity to test in a year. And also it allows us to take advantage of the Prometric test centers, which, as I understand, are close to or over 300 test centers around North America. So we're looking to have candidates to be able to travel less as well. But during this transition time, we're actually offering both the paper and pencil for people that started that way to get them out of that. And so in 2013, we're actually administering the paper and pencil and the computer-based testing. And like I said, the multiple choice sections, IDFX and IDPX, or the fundamentals exam and the professional exam, are computer-based testing. And as a reminder of that process, that a recent graduate takes IDFX after they've graduated, and then once they've accumulated that necessary work experience, they're ready to sit for IDPX and the practicum section of the exam. Now, to be specific about what those exams consist of, the fundamentals exam consists of 125 questions, and every candidate will have 3 hours to complete this section. And you can see the areas that are being tested on the screen: building systems, construction standards, and design applications. And then IDPX is a little bit longer exam consisting of 175 questions, and every candidate has 4 hours to complete this section of the exam, which tests building systems, codes, professional practice, and project coordination. So you can see these are something that were identified in the practice analysis as something that an interior designer does every day. Now for the practicum section of the exam, which is our design scenario that sometimes people often call it. Here, it is a total of 8 hours broken down into 7 independent exercises. For the immediate future, this exam will continue to be administered in a paper and pencil format. We are investigating taking this section to computer-based testing as well. It's a little bit more of a complicated process, but we're working towards that for sure. And it will be the traditional exam centers that we've always had in the past, where it's 1 day, twice a year. Now, to be specific, and I said those that the practicum exam is broken down into 3 parts. Part A of the exam, which is administered on that morning, consists of 4 hours. And every candidate will have those 4 hours to complete a space planning exercise and a lighting design exercise. Now I thought it was really important I wanted to show you a sample of some of the exercises. And here's a space planning exercise. And really, candidates in the space planning exercise, and I got to get to my notes because I want to make sure I tell you correctly, where the candidates are asked to design a planned solution meeting all the program and code requirements for 15 to 20 spaces, including adjacencies, accessibility, egress, and specified power voice data requirements. And I think this is a really good example to show that really these are the things that an interior designer does every day. After a lunch break, candidates come back and parts B and C are distributed to them. And in part B, candidates will execute 3 exercises, and they'll have 2 hours to complete the 3 exercises of an egress exercise, the life safety exercise, and the restroom design exercise. I think I answered yes, an egress exercise. And I like this one because this is something that really does directly affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And where the candidate takes the upper floor of a multi-story building with one existing tenant, and then that candidate is asked to subdivide the remaining floor for 4 additional spaces and determine the occupancy load for each, create a common egress corridor, show the common path of travel from the existing suite, and the travel distance to exit stairs, and calculate the occupant load for each exit stair. So this is a very significant exercise in the practicum portion of the NCIDQ examination. And then in part C, we have the final 2 exercises of a systems integration exercise and a millwork exercise. And I did bring along the millwork exercise. And here, candidates are asked to draw the plan view of the required millwork solution and draw an elevation and draw the section at an element that requires accessibility. So again, these are some of the exercises that make up all of that. And I'd be happy to share with the board. I have descriptions of each individual exercise and get into the specifics, but at my limited time, I wanted to show you some significant ones to really show you what the NCIDQ exam is testing, and because I think it is really important for these our multidisciplinary boards, for all of the board members to really understand what the NCIDQ exam is testing. Some important dates that are coming up, and one just passed, the June 1st, June 3rd deadline for the candidates applying for all 3 sections. And then we have that August 1st deadline for those IDFX only candidates that I was talking about. So that means those recent graduates that just graduated in May. And I had the opportunity, I believe it was last month, to talk to the University of Tennessee graduating class and had a really great conversation with them, finding out how their program was working and to really give them a good, clear trajectory on their candidate experience. And then that fall exam for the paper and pencil, meaning sections 1 and 2 of the previous format and the practicum, will be October 4th and 5th. And then the testing window for IDFX will be October 17th through the 26th. And I know I've thrown a lot at you as quick as I possibly could, and I do always want to leave you with some last resources. And one is the NCIDQ website. It is a treasure trove of things that are going on with NCIDQ. There's so much that's posted there for free as candidates are preparing for the exam, as specifics as to what exact content area we're looking for in all of those multiple choice questions, as well as the practicum section. I'd also give them an opportunity to buy prep materials to help them understand what's being tested. But we also, do have our customer service team that are always available to answer any specific questions. And as I work directly with Susan as the liaison directly to the Council of Delegates, I'm always happy to help any board member with any questions they might have about the NCIDQ examination. But I did want to make sure I left some time to hopefully maybe answer any questions that you might have about the NCIDQ examination, the NCIDQ examination process. I know you're out there on the front line often talking about these things, and I want to make sure you have the most current and accurate and up-to-date information that we can. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to, answer those questions and get you any information that you might need.
And this is Susan Ballard. Have you all seen an upswing in enrollment for the exam this fall with the changes?
We just administered the spring exam, and what I can tell you is in the practicum section, it's our best often measure, especially in this transition year, Susan, for the multiple choice exams. But in the practicum section, because I happen to be involved in the grading part of that, we saw almost 200 more exams from the fall of 2012 to the spring of 2013. I have to make sure I back up correctly. So we are seeing a nice uptick of exam candidates. We're also seeing a nice uptick of those recent graduates coming into the exam process as well. And that was with limited marketing for that first time. We're ramping that up, so we're hoping to even see more of that happening as well. So we really are seeing significant, increases in those exam numbers for sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, I heard you all weren't a shy group, so I hope there's some good questions there.
And this is Philip Lim. I'm the engineer member here. Who helps write your examination question?
We have actually NCIDQ certificate holders are exam writers, and we have an item writing committee that is trained on writing multiple choice questions, and then they write questions, and then it goes to those questions that they write go to our multiple choice committee, which actually are further trained people. We call them the master item writers, that actually refine those questions even more and decide if they're questions that are ready to be pre-tested. Each of the multiple choice exams include a certain number of unscored questions. That's a way for us to pre-test those questions to see how they perform. And all of our psychometric review of our questions and analysis and how they're written, we work very closely with, we have been working with ACT, and just this year we started working with Prometric, which has helped us take the the multiple choice questions to computer-based testing. So we were part of that process. So we've been working with some of the top vendors in psychometric and exam development in the industry, like ACT and Prometric.
Thank you. Any other questions?
You're very welcome, Philip.
One question just for my own interest. Do you have any cut score committee where you all look at the score that comes in and then you all decide the passing rate?
Absolutely. That is very much part of the validation process of any professional practice exam. And we actually, because we introduced the computer-based testing in 2013, we just completed a cut score study that I believe the board is going to be looking at those recommendations for the cut score process and the grading of those multiple choice exams. And that is very much a part of the process that we take very, very seriously, as making sure that the exam is reliable and valid and defensible, just like any good professional practice exam should do.
Thank you. Any other question from a board member?
Here, this is Robert Campbell. How much does there's 3 exams, correct? How much do each one of those cost?
There are 3 sections to the exam.
Yeah, how much do they, just cost-wise, how much do they cost for the applicant to take them?
Sure, and luckily I have my cheat sheet in front of me. It was Robert, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, luckily I have my cheat sheet in front of me because this isn't one that I often know off the top of my head. But IDFX, the fundamentals exam, is $255. The IDPX exam is $300, and the practicum exam is $405. So that's a total of $955 for all three sections. We do price it out individually, Robert, because some candidates do choose, to piecemeal it, and we don't have any requirement for them to take it all at once. And also, candidates are only required to pass a failed section to receive their NCIDQ certificate. So we do price it out individually.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Question from the board?
Yeah, this is Rick Thompson. Where do you have examples of the questions on your website that might educate us as to what you think health, safety, and welfare, what constitutes health, safety, and welfare questions?
There are no questions. Let me take that back. We do offer as a prep material for candidates, we do offer online multiple choice quizzes so that they can start to understand those. And those questions are pulled from the item bank and never show up on a test. We never want the exam to be, when we took our driver's test, and you could basically memorize the book and go in and take the test. We want to always be careful and mindful of that. So there is that. What there is available on the NCIDQ website, there is a really very specific breakdown. I gave you, the overarching content areas of building systems and construction standards, and those overarching areas. There is a great breakdown of each of those specific items as to what the knowledge and skill areas are. Because you start with the overarching content areas and then break it down into the knowledge and skill areas. And that is all up on the NCIDQ website for free. So I think that would get you what you need without actually specifically publishing questions. We try not to do that only because we want to make sure our item bank is as strong as possible, and having questions out floating around is not the best way to do that. But there is, like I said, some very specific information looking at the content areas as well as the specific knowledge and skill areas for each of those content areas. And I can even forward a link to John where that is on the website, but it's pretty clear under the exam tab and under exam content.
And this is Susan Ballard again. Has the STEPS course been readjusted to the new exam format?
STEP course, that is something that is administered by ASID, or was administered by ASID, I should say. It is something they discontinued. It doesn't exist as of right now, Susan. I think they're reevaluating how they were administering that program, because they had their STEP leaders that were literally recreating practicum sections. And what has happened in that vacuum is that some of the STEP leaders, the professors of these courses, have begun purchasing NCIDQ examination practice design problems, which are old exams that were administered in the past, and we can't do anything with them, so we publish them. And they use those in their courses. And so there are still those additional prep materials, and if somebody doesn't want to take, and pay for the class, they can get just the practice design problem and work through that in it, on their own as well as preparation. We always feel that it's really important in this candidate experience that we give somebody options. We know this is a very expensive endeavor, and so we want to give them options, whether it's the STEP course, whether it is being able to do the practice design problems on their own with some colleagues, that may be sitting for the exam as well, and that kind of thing. But we are always very sharing of information with the prep courses and working, if any of you know David Ballast, who does a reference manual, of giving them information about what is being tested. Because all of that, what is being tested is public information, and that part is important for us to share. What we can't share are the specific questions that are written, and actually the specifics of the design scenario that the candidate will sit down with on that day.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Any other question from the board? John? Ken, on behalf of the board, I certainly appreciate your time and thank you for the presentation. It was very informative and educational for us.
Great. Thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting. And, if there are specific questions, I know often, once I hang up, there might be something that comes up. Pass it off to Susan, and Susan has my email. I often say, I may not always know the answer, but I definitely know where to go in our organization to get it for you. And I'm always happy to be that kind of traffic control person for any of our member boards. So I would really encourage you to do that, and I would be happy to assist in any way I can. But thank you, and good luck with the rest of your meeting today.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, bye now.
Bye.
A motion to take a 5 minutes break. Can I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
We'll be back 5 minutes.
Yes.
Call your break.
From what the gentleman was saying about their fees here.
Hi, I'm Dan. Price.
All right, are we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, I think it's on page 39 of your pad. Start right out. Under new cases, number 1 is 2013-005621, and this complaint alleges the respondent, it's an unlicensed company, is advertised and provided and/or is providing engineering services in the form of roof inspections and consultation. Advertises construction and engineering services in violation of TCA 622101. Evidenced by the respondent's website, vehicles, personnel attire, and other business articles bearing the appellation engineering advertisements. All attempts to contact and elicit a response have not been successful. There is no complaint history for this response. Recommendation is issue a cease and desist order and authorize
Okay. Do we hear a motion for the recommendation by council?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second for the motion? Second. Do I have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next.
$13,009,251. This complete services for a residential project. While the respondent's license was expired in violation of 622101, the respondent's license expired on February 28th of 05. Evidence of renewal or attempt to renew in the complaint file. In a written reply, the respondent admits to an oversight and states that there will be no further activity until the respondent is properly licensed again. Complaint history for this respondent. So they recommend authorize a formal hearing and issue a consent order for a penalty in the amount of $500, along with the requirement to take and pass the law and rules examination.
We have a recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Wait, one residential project, Rob, was all there was?
Action, foundation, analysis, calculation, and bore a stamp. And he's self-reported.
Any question? Discussion?
I don't know why it's only one since '05. That's a long time. I couldn't figure out how you could forget for. That's the only evidence we have is that one case. He said he wanted to, or in this case, reapply because he's way past the renewal period.
Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carry. Next comment.
Case it's under board member review. That's this next one. 23. On an unregistered individual provided professional engineering service in the production of construction documentation in violation of 62.2101. Response from the individual's attorney claimed that the respondent, a licensed land surveyor, did not violate the board's registration requirements in the production of a plat. Complaint materials were forwarded to engineer board member Mr. King for review to determine if any probable cause on it. Of course, I recommend to adopt the reviewing board member's recommendation based on his.
What I was asked to review was I would, rather than a plat, I would term it a site plan. It's a drawing showing existing and proposed contours with two structures located on it. Prior to today, I had not seen the attorney's response for the respondent, but my opinion was that this drawing should have been stamped by a registrant of this board, not a surveyor. It doesn't even show the entire parcel. If it was produced as a plat, it would show the entire parcel. It only shows the portion of the parcel that there's grading and structures being placed on. So I didn't think it was an appropriate design for a surveyor. There is some overlap in I guess our practice, not only within this board but also with surveyors, and I think John forwarded me the language that where our board says that certain grading can be done by either an engineer or a surveyor, but that appears to me to be mainly in regards to subdivision construction. This is more than grading, in my opinion. It's a very minor structure, but it still is locating a building and grading.
Is this a residential or commercial project?
Commercial.
Grading that would change the stormwater pattern of some.
It's cutting into a hillside. It could
Have to go this way instead of this way,
Yes.
potentially. Okay.
The way that we like to think about the difference is surveying is measuring, engineering is designing. The plat is basically a map of what currently exists. I kind of suspected this looked more like a civil design plan, but I wanted a review just to make sure that an expert engineer was able to make that determination. If it had design elements in it to the extent that it becomes a design document.
I think in the attorney's letter back to the board, he indicated that the individual had placed some of these items on his drawing at the direction of an architect, but I guess the problem is there's nothing on the drawing that states that. The only thing on the drawing is the surveyor's stamp.
If it was produced for the purpose of filing at a register of deeds to establish boundaries? That's what a plat's supposed to do.
No, it's not a survey plat. You couldn't. You might find a register of deeds to take it, but I can't imagine that one would take a plat without showing the entire polygon.
What's your recommendation?
Well, I'm really not familiar with how we deal with.
Well, you can recommend
these
the board can either take on your recommendation, or we can.
Recommend that the board discuss it.
I would think that we should discuss it, but I would also think that at a very minimum, this surveyor should be instructed when he places things on his drawing that he attribute the design intent to whatever professional. It's not appropriate for him to just stamp anything on a drawing. But since I'm relatively new, I'm not familiar with how we've dealt with penalties for non-registrants of this board.
But we
I
only
think that's what
govern the
Alton was trying to show me there.
So, Rob, really, legally, we can't do anything unless we report him to the lens. But
we can issue cease and desist, though, can't we?
Well, if there's probable cause to think it's the unlicensed practice of civil engineering, we can do something. It would be a cease and desist with a civil penalty if you want. There's no complaint history for us, but it could qualify for a $500 civil penalty. No law and rule exam because he's not a registrant of this board, but it's unlicensed practice if you feel there's probable cause.
Yeah, I think we should at least give him a letter of warning.
I would, since he went and got himself an attorney and to write an opinion, and is it your opinion that he thinks he's in the right, the way it's done? Or his attorney is saying that it is?
Attorney indicates that that it's not engineering. That's not surprising.
The attorney's hung up on things that weren't the point. The attorney refers to some notes that talk about the pavement section in the parking lot. And he's just quoting that, well, we got that out of this particular city's subdivision regulations, and he was just regurgitating. But that's really not the issue. The issue is that it's a site plan, and he did a grading plan showing existing and proposed contours, and he located buildings.
I would advocate that we follow our guidelines and issue a cease and desist order. And again, we have the latitude to assess a civil penalty, right? The normally recommended penalty range is $500 to $1,000.
No complaint history, and we only have this one instance, so it's...
I think at least for the minimum would be the cease in the letter.
I agree. I think that's the minimum. I guess if we had a complaint before, we would definitely proceed toward the fine.
Rating factors, but it's the only one we know of, no complaint history.
But here, I need somebody to make a motion for the recommendation.
I move that we issue a cease and desist letter to the respondent.
Question for that? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, open for discussion.
Did your motion also include any penalty, just a cease and desist?
No,
Just that, simply because it's the first offense. There's no probably ought to copy the surveyor's board also.
I'm assuming that you give him a specific law that he's violated, right? The language of the law in the letter, in the cease and desist order.
Quite clear what the opinion of the board is and why.
stop him from using the drawings anyway?
I don't.
Already built
Mr.
it, though.
Mr. King might be able to tell you what the drawings are produced for. If they were produced to get a permit for construction, that would definitely be engineering. But I don't think a codes official would accept a document like that with a surveyor stamp on it.
There is a stamp on it that says it's an advanced print. I'm not really sure what it was. It doesn't say not for construction. It just says advanced print subject to change.
Was it submitted to an agency for review?
Don't know.
Motion, do we have a second?
Yeah, we did. So we're over the discussion.
How did we get the complaint if it wasn't from?
A individual who is an engineer and a surveyor filed the complaint.
Thank you.
Someone who knows the rules of both professions.
Oh, and then get jumped then? All right, any other discussion? Do we have a motion, a second, close for discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carry. Next.
Right. There's a couple of cases with updated information here. First one, this complaint was previously presented at the February meeting. Alleged that the respondent, a licensed engineer, failed to keep privilege taxes up to date for years. Delinquency may result in suspension, 3 years for revocation. Under the authority of the board's rules, any delinquency over 2 years is grounds for discipline. The recommendation, which was approved by the board, was to authorize a formal hearing and a consent order to suspend registration until all delinquency. The update is the respondent's license expired on January 31st of this year, and he's not attempted to renew. Recommendation now is to rescind the consent order, flag the respondent's file that application accepted until all delinquent obligations are brought to current.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? One question is, how long we put the flag in this file? Is it forever or?
Definite.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just for clarification, he's been notified that he's suspended?
And a consent order because you ordered me to offer to settle the matter by suspending him until he paid up. Since that time, he expired and is now past the renewal period.
Do you have any evidence that he's continuing to practice?
You and I will not know if I'm just something.
We have evidence. I'm sure that we've sent these by certified mail. Return receipt requested. Was that acknowledged?
First is regular mail, second is certified. Right. I sent him one certified, and I didn't get the consent order back.
Was there an acknowledgement, I'm assuming? No, on the certified mail return receipt requested.
Complaints are on the computer, so I can't bring the case with me. So. Of your letter dated February 27, notifying me of your intended action for my failure to pay the privilege tax. Got it, obviously. Please note I have not practiced engineering in the state for 4 years. I've not offered services as a professional engineer. Work or live in your state. They're not intending to work in the state of Tennessee. Not practice in the state, and I notified your office of this in 2010. Not exercise the privilege for which you tax me, which is relevant, but that's the response. Doesn't sound like he's intending to renew. Well, he can't renew now because he's past the time. He'd have to reapply. So the recommendation is if he attempts to reapply, changes his mind, he's got to pay all these taxes up and make them current before we'll allow him to reapply.
About 6 months from his expiration in January, so he could still attempt to renew.
But he has to bring it up. Yeah, he has to pay all the debts and everything.
Yeah, he's got to satisfy the privilege tax requirements before we would allow him to renew.
And he did receive our certified letter notifying him of his delinquency in November of last year. We've got the signed certified mail card. He signed on November 15th, so he knew about it well before he even received the consent order from Mr. Herndon.
Really no need to rescind his license since he no longer holds one in the state. He failed to renew.
Yeah, I was asking to rescind the consent order you approved before because you need your authority to do that. Take the consent order back and just flag his file and then we'll deal with it then.
I mean, I don't think so. It's a burden to add on to when he reapply. Can we require him to take the law and rule, pass the test?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that, right? Okay. Can you all make that? Because I want him to read the law and rules. So. I'd like to add in. Do I need to get a new motion or?
Is that what you're stating? Okay.
So do I need to go back to the motion and ask them to do a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment to attach the law requirement.
1 second. Who seconded this motion? Is they okay with that friendly amendment? All right. Any other more discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Right, number 2, I think has a happier ending. 2013-002151. This complaint was previously presented in February. Basically, same language as the last one. The update is since the board's ruling, the respondent has provided proof that all obligations are current. Recommendation is to rescind the consent order, issue a letter of warning to maintain all licensure requirements.
We should make him pass the law and rule exam too, isn't he? Counsel?
I would move that we accept the attorney's recommendation plus the respondent to take the law and rules exam. Take and pass the law and rules exam.
Thank you, sir. Got a motion on the table? Any second today?
Second.
Okay, second by Frank. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, the last one is just for new privilege tax case. Heading is the complaints alleged that the respondents, design professionals registered by the board, have failed to keep privilege state for at least the last 2 years, despite being notified by the board staff. Years delinquency may result in suspension and revocation in cases of 3 years. So under the authority of the board's rules, any delinquency over 2 years is ground for misconduct. So the general recommendation for all of them is authorize a formal hearing and a consent order to suspend registration One is, I'll just read them all, and then you can approve the recommendation or reject. 009561, this person is an architect, 3 years delinquent. Number 2, 2013-009541, engineer, 4 years. Number 3, 2013-009551, engineer, 4 years. And then the last one is 2013-009571, engineer, 3 years.
So the motion, the recommendation is to authorize a formal hearing and the consent order to suspend registration until all delinquent privilege taxes are proven to be current, right? So that's the recommendation for the council.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. You done? Thank you. John, you're up next. Director report.
Very good. Report first on a couple of national council meetings. Rick Thompson and I have received approval to attend the NCARB annual meeting in San Diego on June 19th through the 22nd at state expense. Jerry Headley and Frank Wagster will be attending as our NCARB funded delegates. So all 3 architects will be attending that meeting as well as myself. Hal Balthrop, Ricky Bursai, Rob Herndon, and I have been approved to attend the NCEES annual meeting in San Antonio on August 21st through the 24th. Other meetings, I spoke at the Tennessee Building Officials Association annual conference in Gatlinburg on April the 29th to provide updates on board activities. Carolyn Lazenby, who's director of the Contractors Board, and representatives from the State Fire Marshal's office also spoke at this event. And the primary thing that I focused on in my presentation was just really encouraging the building officials to work with us in trying to enforce our laws and rules and to protect the public, encouraging them to call us if they have problems, forward complaints to us if necessary. And so far I've had some positive results from it, and we've maintained overall a good relationship with the building officials over the years, especially the local building officials. They usually don't hesitate for the most part to contact us if they have issues, and that frequently does result in complaints and disciplinary action on occasion when necessary. Other issues, our office was relocated to the 5th floor of the Davy Crockett Tower on May the 3rd, and I think most of you have seen our new office space. If you haven't, go up to the 5th floor and we'll be happy to show it. The rulemaking hearing that was authorized at the April meeting will be held in August. The proposed rules, I believe, Rob, they're still being reviewed within the department, correct?
As far as I understand, they made it out of the department. They go to the governor's office. They want at least 2 weeks. And we can file a notice soon.
Right. Once those are filed with the Secretary of State's office, we'll put a link to that on our website and publish that in our newsletter. You think it may be hopefully August. It could be at a later meeting. We'll see. Of course, October will be at the Tennessee Tech, so we could still do a hearing there, right? Okay, but I'm hoping for August. So,
yes,
that's our target date. So,
hope springs eternal.
Yes. Draft of the spring-summer newsletter. It will be distributed for review shortly, I hope. I'm holding off on that because I wanted to put a notice of our rulemaking hearing in the newsletter, but I can't do that until it's been filed with the Secretary of State, obviously, so I'm kind of in limbo on that right now. So hopefully that'll be distributed soon. All of the grant contracts for this fiscal year have been approved with the exception of the contract with TSU. We have yet to receive the signed contract back from them, so our staff in the department is following up with that, trying to determine the location of the contract. Monies should be distributed very soon if they have not yet been distributed to the other schools. We have had some staff changes in the department, staff that handle contracts, so that has created some major delays in getting approval of contracts for this fiscal year, but it's improving. We've got some new staff involved in handling contracts, so I think that's behind us now. And but I've gotten a lot of. You may hear from some of the schools, I don't know, but I've heard from some of the schools they've been really nervous about the contracts being delayed so much that normally they would already have their money, and they're getting it so late in the fiscal year. Many of the schools have gotten very nervous about it, but with the exception of TSU, we should be in good shape on it, and hopefully TSU will be rectified very soon. Also, I thought I would mention, as you know, your favorite tax, the professional privilege tax, was due and payable on June 1st, as it is each year. This year was a little different because, as reported in our last newsletter, they're now requiring the payments to be made online. And we did hear from several registrants who were upset about having to provide their Social Security number online in paying the tax. So I told some of them that I would pass that along to you, that they were concerned about having to disclose that information. Not that the board really has much control over that process, but just to make you aware of it.
Why couldn't they do that just by license number, which your licensure contains your Social Security information?
We'd have to have somebody from Revenue here to respond to that.
John, you might pass this comment on to him as well. When I tried to do it online, because I didn't have American Express, MasterCard, or the other one listed, I only had that. I didn't know if it would accept it because I didn't see Visa. But also, doing a bank draft, because I think last year I did it by bank draft, which was very nice and convenient. That option isn't even in there.
I did it by bank draft this time.
But I didn't see the links to take me there. I did see it, but I didn't see a link that took me there. Now maybe I'm just computer illiterate.
It was in there because I'm like you. We have a Visa card, not a MasterCard or an American Express, so I had to do it by bank draft for me and all of my employees. So I know it was in there, and it just showed up on our last bank statement.
As I said, when I saw it on there, but I was expecting to see a link, and maybe that's where the gray matter and the keyboard weren't coordinated.
Just to pass along to you that our employer will not pay for your credit card surcharge, which is amount to about $9.96.
It's about $10 that you get a surcharge on a credit card.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out another way to do that besides credit card.
I resolved it the easy way. Went down to the bank, got a cashier's check, and just sent it by.
Routing number account.
You'd get a lot of calls from registrants who were upset about that change, and also about the fact that is it just Visa that they don't accept, or this? Yeah, just Visa that they don't accept Visa when that's one of the most widely used. Yeah. Well, no, you can use it for online renewals, but for some reason the professional privilege tax online system won't accept it. I don't understand that.
But I think you need to let them know the feeling of the registrant. No, I mean, we pay $400, yet turn around, if we use credit card, we get dinged for $9.96.
That was one of our issues too, is that it was that extra $10. And when
No human interaction. It goes through the system and on to the bank, and then the bank sends it back electronically, and bingo.
I passed along those concerns. I've done my job there. Another issue to bring up, you may recall at previous meetings I mentioned that we're in the process of replacing our licensing system, the regulatory board system, which was implemented in 1993, still in use. It's old, but still working, thankfully. We're working on a new system currently. Progress is being made on that. Hopefully in the next year or so, we'll have a new licensing system that will provide a platform from which we can have online applications as well as online renewals. So that will greatly facilitate our processes.
Question for you on that, John. I've been through a few of these data transitions and new softwares and those kind of things. Who is doing your data verification once that's done to make all of a sudden all the licenses don't show up in inactive status? Or and I'm saying that, but a lot of people I've been involved with have gone through that same kind of thing, that it's really somebody hits a field wrong or it transfers one set of data. And I mean, I don't think it should be incumbent on the staff to sit there with a hard copy and go through the entire database. I think that's a little bit, but somebody needs to do some data verification to make sure that all of a sudden you don't get 150 phone calls the next day because somebody's getting a letter, license isn't active or something.
Of course, the vendor will do a lot of that, and we're going to work closely with them. Our staff will be checking records as well. I will tell you that the vendor that's been selected is the same vendor that developed RBS. I mean, they're under a different name. I'm sure there's been some buyouts over the years, but this is essentially the latest version of the RBS system that the state our department is purchasing. So they are very familiar with our current database, and I think that's really going to facilitate the transfer of that data. It's not a totally different company that just has no clue how our current database is set up. The system that we are purchasing that will be developed is in some ways, at least behind the scenes, there's some similarities between what we're using now and what we'll have in place when this new system goes online. So that's, I think, is going to really help with that. And that's one reason why they selected this vendor, because they do have the familiarity with our current system.
But do you
Just a word of caution. I mean, that's
you yourself, you have a hard copy somewhere to verify it.
You want us to print our whole database out?
I mean, it's somewhere to back up.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, they back up our data.
I still have my first page stuff from like this one.
Right. I have all our data on a flash drive in my pocket right now. That's our back, and I'm just kidding. That is not true, by the way.
It's on a floppy.
Yeah, it's on a floppy disk. Yes.
I'll keep my own record.
No. Okay. Only joking. All right. On page 44 of your iPads, you have the legislative update. You'll notice we've had 4 bills listed here that have passed. The first is the one I'm the happiest about. That's the bill that amended our law to prepare for the computerization of the engineering exams. It takes the whole 8-hour exam language out, because the FE exam is now 6 hours. It will be starting in 2014. So we had the 8-hour language removed and a few other changes. That passed. Another bill that prohibits renewal of a license unless civil penalties have been paid and authorizes implementation of an electronic system for submitting complaints and applications passed. And another one of note for the board, a bill passed that requires expedited issuance of licenses for veterans and their spouses, and makes some other changes in regard to veterans as well, or active duty service members in some cases. And you have copies of those bills behind the pending legislation spreadsheet there. And also I will mention that Section 50 of the Appropriations Bill, Public Chapter 453, does include the changes that we requested to the grants appropriation. The amount has been increased to $300,000, and the funds are now going to be available to both public and private institutions. So when we notify the schools about the grants this year, the private institutions will be included as well as public. So worth that too. As far as the one about issuance of licenses for veterans and renewals for active duty service members, I'm not sure what impact that's going to have on us at this point, if we're going to need to do rulemaking. It doesn't take effect until July 1st, so we'll be getting with legal staff on that to determine what, if any, changes are required to implement that law. Questions on that?
On the private schools, do they have to meet the same guidelines as the state in terms of accreditation and?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they will. They'll have to comply with our grant guidelines. And later on the agenda, we have some proposed revisions to the grant guidelines required in order to distribute the funds to the private schools. Got to have that in place before we can notify them about it. Because the appropriations bill requires us to develop guidelines for distribution of the funds. Beginning on page 54, you have some licensing data, the number of registrants, as well as applications reviewed and approved. The number of registrants, you'll notice from April and February, has dipped a little bit. That's very common this time of year. Again, because of your favorite tax, the professional privilege tax. We frequently have some cancellations in the first half of the year.
There's a mathematical error on the interior designers.
That would be Wanda Garner's fault, if there is.
I think it should be 453 instead of 253.
Where is it? Oh, yes, you're right, yeah. Yeah, we haven't had that big of a drop, you're right.
When I looked at it at first, I
Thank
thought,
goodness.
oh dear.
Yes,
I
that's...
think Wanda should be forgiven. She spent how many hours trying to find Philip a breakfast to go to that he didn't show up.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't show up too.
All right. Yes, thank you for noting that error. Wanda, correct that next time, okay? All right. I'm still saying behind tab. I don't know when I'm going to change that. On page 56 on your iPad, you have a listing of open complaints. This is a snapshot as of June the 6th. At that time, we had 43 open complaints. You see, we had 9 over 180 days old, but all of those have had clock stopping action, which means that a formal hearing's been authorized or something that's stopped the clock. 10 have been authorized, formal hearings have been authorized to be heard by the board, 15 by an administrative law judge. Those are privilege tax cases. And our percent on time in the last 18 months, where the clock was stopped within 180 days, is 97.65%. That's actually an older figure. I think now it's over 98%, the last statistic that I saw on that. Doing good, keeping up with our complaints.
Okay, go ahead.
The ones that are for formal, John and Rob, those are obviously some of our older ones. Are
Right.
those moving? And I mean, I'm glad to see that we're, except for those few, we have most of those are fairly up to date, 2012, 2013. And those are moving towards some sort of resolution, whether it's a hearing in front of this board or a of some sort.
Right.
We
Yeah, they're
are
never moving as fast as we would like, but they are moving. The oldest one, we're hoping that might be resolved through an agreed order, potentially, very soon, perhaps by the next meeting. That's what we're hoping. So. Okay. So we're hoping that the oldest one on here, which goes back to 2007, we're hoping that one will be resolved very soon. But then we've got some back to 2009 that we've got to work on. So we do have a litigator that's working diligently on
moving
those.
through some process.
Right.
Okay.
But just like our staff attorneys, we're not the only program he has, so he's got other programs to work with as well. But they are moving forward. Beginning on page 58, you have financial data. This is the just the summary report on the third quarter, and then you have the spreadsheet and details behind that. Mr. Thompson is actually our current secretary/treasurer, so if he wanted to report on this, he's welcome to.
I would like to turn this over back to staff since they prepared it. So if you'd like.
Very good. I'll be happy to do that. Revenue for the third quarter has decreased somewhat, except for, let's see, all professions with the exception of architects and engineer interns experienced a decrease. Those were the only two that didn't see it. We have had a decrease, which I think is really just a normal fluctuation. Expenses did decrease, but the decrease looks significant. I mean, it's almost $129,000, but that's really because all the grants are going to be paid out during the fourth quarter. It's just a matter of when the expenditures happen to fall. They were a little different from the previous fiscal year. And also the engineering exams were paid a different quarter as well, so that's affected that. But overall expenditures have been pretty consistent with what they have been. And you do have the detail on the spreadsheet, and if you want to drill down further, you do have the expenditure details for the third quarter, as well as the revenue breakdown by month. And then, of course, you have your pretty pie charts and bar charts showing you the revenue, the expenditures, and a comparison with the previous fiscal year. I will be happy to entertain any questions on that if you have them. Otherwise, that concludes my report.
John, the bottom line is we're well within our proposed budget.
Oh, yes, yeah, we're on target to have a good surplus as we have in previous years. They are changing somewhat how, well, let me give you some background. There's what we call a finance and administration licensing fee that's charged each year. It's basically $5 a head. For every licensee you have, you pay $5 to F&A. It's been determined in a recent audit that amount has been calculated incorrectly for boards like ours, where licensees renew every 2 years. It's been calculated as if they're all renewing on an annual basis, when in fact in our case, they only renew every 2 years. So that's going to maybe change a little bit how that's assessed. I think it may result in actually a decrease of what we've been paying in that fee, but I'm not 100% certain at this point. But I'm not sure that the cost backs will change dramatically from what we've paid previously.
If not, Mr. Robert Campbell is going to report on the engineer committee.
We met this morning without two of our members, unfortunately, Hal Bothrop and Philip Lim, and had probably the shortest engineering meeting that we've ever had. But that being as it may, the things that we really discussed, we have the Southern Zone meeting, and we're still discussing the fees that are paid. I think NCAAS is going to make a motion to reduce it from $250 to $225, even though there's a 25% reduction in the testing time, according to them. So we'll hear that. We've got other issues that the Southern talk about. We also had a couple things of correspondence that came in. One from Joseph Carson regarding an ethics whistleblowing issue, and we're going to respond to that. Another one from Danny Bowen, and this is something that we're looking at doing a article in the newsletter. His concern was that engineers, and I think he's more in the electrical, passing off some of the electrical design to contractors based on the fees that the architects are cutting them out of. So he didn't say that, I said that. So, but he is concerned that that a lot of the design work is not getting done because of some of these fees. Talked about that, and that does seem to be something that has some merit to it. be active in filing complaints if there are any, as well as some newsletter information along those. Besides that, I can't think of anything that we had our normal discussion on applications and audits, but everything else was pretty much straight down the line.
Thank Robert for covering me.
Covering for you.
For me.
I didn't cover you.
Question, Robert. That one letter from, as you said, the whistleblower thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think our thoughts right now are we understand some of the issue. It's been going on for a long time. There are some things from a jurisdictional standpoint that we don't have control over. There's some things that he's done exactly right. I mean, I think all things he looks like he has done exactly right. And I think the determination part of that will be and how far we can go. Just as a reminder, it does say if you see something that somebody's doing, you're to kind of raise your hand and say stop, and if you don't stop, then that you try to back away from that situation up to resigning from that task or assignment. Following those progressions, and I think you just need some other guidance from the board.
Thank you. That's a great report.
Thank you.
How about architects?
Yes, the architects, we met this morning, or at noon, and we reviewed the NCARB language changes, and that we are all in support of. It's just more cleaning up the language. Canadian/U.S. licensure reciprocal agreements, making it to going out to the national convention next week and choose to report. So
you're happy?
We're happy.
Happy, okay. Any other question from the architects committee? Thank you, Rick, for the report. John, this next is unfinished business. You have?
Yes, action items are on page 69, and I'm happy to report that all of these have been completed with the exception of Mr. Thompson's newsletter article, which I'm sure is underway. I actually gave him an alternative. If he didn't want to write on that issue, he might write an article on QBS, perhaps, on the new rule we adopted prohibiting competitive bidding on local public works projects. So that's an alternative option for him, at which point we could remove him from the action item list.
That would be good.
Yes. And Hal Balthrop's record of accrual form is on our website. So if anybody wants a form to use in recording specific activities, you can direct them to that form. And we revised the summary log as well.
I'm sorry, I left one thing off the engineering report.
Okay.
We did also volunteer Mr. Balthrop to aid Mr. Cawthorn if he needs it in the ACEC TSP annual meeting on the presentation. So if you need him as a resource when you talk about meetings at this job, remember Balthrop was recommended from this group. Now, Mr. Balthrop.
See, he has the power to delegate, so.
I was chairman.
Yeah.
Lucky you didn't get some.
No, I did. I was supposed to help him.
John, I will say that the writing the newsletter article on the other subject is. Can I talk a little bit about what I just did? Reviewed proposals, the RFQs. general.
Anonymous generalization,
Yeah.
summary of the
There was
situation.
the local school system had asked for RFQs, and there was a local architect who had requested that we review the RFQs to see if they were in compliance with fees or asking for fees. And their approach was, how would you be, what is your idea of compensation? It was not asking you to quote a fee. So, they system. So there were 6 of them I reviewed. 6 submittals. 6 finalists. Unfortunately, mine wasn't in there. It asks how would you expect to be compensated, not how much, but yeah, cash. But just in what fashion? And some people responded fixed fee, some responded state sliding scale, some responded basically that kind of response. So it was just, what do you expect? I mean, what compensation will you expect? So, and some just said percentage, some said fixed fee, and then, like I said, state scale, sliding scale for qualification-based selection only was quoted. And actually, one of the submittals sent a copy of our rule change and said, very impressive,
Yes.
that we reserve comment because of this rule change. I said, all right. Yeah. Yes. As a matter of fact, I think that company won. Which I will rename anonymous.
Anything else, Rick?
No, thank you.
Okay, now let's go into some new business. We have the officer election according to our bylaw. I think our bylaws is what you call it. And is that the current vice chair is Bill Lockwood, and then the secretary is. So based on the nomination recommendation at the April meeting was to present Bill as the chair, and then Rick Thompson as the vice chair, and then to Robert Campbell has been nominated as the secretary treasurer. That's the new sledge officer for July, starting effective July 1. So that I need somebody to make a motion that we accept. Or do we need a second, since the nomination committee submitted that? They stand as a second? No. Right. Thank you. That's good, man.
I move that the slate of officers that was presented by the nominating committee be accepted and approved.
Nomination, any second for the nomination? You second. Any discussion? Only I'll tell you, gentlemen, it pays really well.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to let you
Thank
know
you,
that.
Mr. Chairman.
It has been a good experience. So with that, hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
So congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Yes, so I tell you, I have recommended they double your salary. Yeah.
Yeah, double the salary.
Double salary. Zero times 2. So.
Yeah.
Next is the nominees for the Energy Efficient School Council. Rick, you currently serve on that committee. You want to tell us the committee a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's the Energy Efficient Schools Initiative, and it's for bringing all the K through 12 schools up to meet energy compliance, and we've done a lot of low fruit picking by changing out the lighting and things like that, and it's been very efficient. They've saved millions of dollars statewide. It's a revolving fund. It was $90 million that was allocated from the lottery for that, and it's a perpetual fund, We make loans, some zero interest and some very low interest loans to school systems, and it does everything from geothermal to replacing windows and that type of thing to help the buildings become more energy efficient and comply with state energy codes and IBC energy codes. I served on the committee for 4 years, and they're asking for us to, I guess, send the speaker, John?
The Speaker of the House.
Scott Gilmer.
Yeah, and they're asking for a nomination, and it's a designated nomination from the board. It doesn't necessarily have to be an architect. I would like for an engineer to possibly take the position this time. It's a 4-year nomination, and they meet bi-monthly. You can do phone conferences with them. I typically do that. I'll come up maybe every 6 months, but I'm on the phone with them. It's about a 2-hour conference call every other month. It's very good cause. There's some good people on the board, and so I would like to offer someone else the opportunity to serve on it. And
Your term finish in June 30, expire?
Yes. Yeah. Serve until you're replaced, and now they're putting some new members on board, and some people are rolling off that don't want to be on it anymore. So
I think it's a good idea for. I like your recommendation to have the engineer. Do I have volunteer for an engineer?
I would like to see if Ricky would be interested. I know with his background in HVAC and a lot of the things they've done on that control side, I think that sounds like.
Ricky, will you be willing to? High-paying job?
High-paying job. I will do that.
Well, they do get a per diem of $100, right, Rick?
Peak mileage.
I thought you had a $100 per diem as opposed to $50 for this board. Maybe cheating you. I don't know. Okay.
I've never sent them a bill.
I like to hear the board make if it's a pleasure of the board, then I hear a motion, somebody nominate Ricky.
I would like to make a motion that we nominate Ricky Bursai as our representative.
Open for discussion, or anybody wants to nominate somebody else. You can nominate yourself. It's okay. It's nothing wrong about feeling good about yourself.
Call for the vote.
John?
Normally, when you submit a list of nominees, you have several candidates. So
Yeah.
I think last time we submitted 3 names.
Oh, did we?
When you were appointed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 3 necessarily, but
Oh, that's right.
Probably more than one.
Jim was on that list.
Right.
And he wound up on the TAC committee, which is a technical advisory committee that advises the council as to what projects meet the criteria. It's prescriptive criteria based on New York City School Systems Energy Code, which is pretty good.
Susan, would Susan want to be nominated?
Start her own company, so she doesn't need to spread herself any thinner right now.
It's okay to feel good about yourself.
It is.
I would like to add Frank then, as long as, with one caveat, that he never asked him.
Take twice as long to get an answer.
That's right.
I second that. There's 2 names, John. Do you need
So the nomination, he's nominated by you, seconded by you, so this is the amendment, right?
No,
I seconded
You second.
Frank. Yeah, but he nominated Frank.
Two nominations.
Yeah.
In favor?
Aye.
You need a third, John?
couldn't hurt, but it's not necessary.
The governor rejected me once. He could
Nominate David Schuerman. Never mind, David. You got your certificate. It's here.
I think we'll stay with 2, we'll be fine. Okay.
If they want another one, we'll come up with another one.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick, for your service.
Thank you.
And enforcement of rules. I can't even read anything. Prohibiting, hold up, competitive bidding. John, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, that begins on page 75 on your iPads. This is a draft notice that would be sent to all registered architects and engineers, as well as local government agencies, regarding the rule change that was adopted, took effect in March of this year, prohibiting competitive bidding on local public works projects. And the notice here actually incorporates some changes that Alton suggested at the last meeting. And behind that is a letter, just a form letter. Of course, it would have to be edited on occasion to meet the circumstances, but this is just a standard form letter that could be sent to local jurisdictions who may be in violation of the requirements of the law in their RFPs, RFQs.
But would a copy of this letter go copy to the contracting licensing board? Contractor board, I guess. Is there any need? I mean, let me say it again. I mean to the building official.
The letter?
You know, just only for us?
It'd be addressed to the local jurisdiction that issued the RFP.
I would think like the both of them represent their constituent agencies, the city government.
Right.
Non-QBS process.
As I was going through this, first of all, let me say I'm totally in favor of what we're trying to do here, and I think it's the right thing. But a couple things kind of hit me, maybe after the fact. We mentioned that a registrant may not enter into this. We don't say companies that hire registrants. So there is, to me, a potential loophole where you have a company that employs engineers that would be able to enter into a contract. This specifically for firms like ours that are sole proprietorships, or, you know, my name's on the door, may put us at a disadvantage from a firm that hires engineers but doesn't have a direct contractual relationship with a registrant. I know we have the firm disclosure form, but we really don't mention some of those things in here. The second thing that's always been a little iffy on my part, and this may just be my part, I know exactly what QBS says about quality-based selection and going to direct negotiation with with the person that you select. However, what you see in some cases are they will pre-qualify 4 or 5 firms and then go into a cost negotiation kind of across the board. I'm not sure exactly where we fall. This thing falls on those two things, and again, I'm all in favor of what we're trying to do. I think selecting somebody based on their qualifications is exactly the right thing to do. However, I want to make sure that we're not creating an even wider gap for those that would take advantage of that restriction anyway to go. And I don't know if I'm seeing this all exactly correct or not.
Proper conduct of practice, where it is prohibiting a government entity from making a selection or awarding a contract on the basis of competitive bids, precluding
once the public body client has selected the most qualified design professional or firm. Multiple firms, it's select the firm.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's how that's going to be interpreted.
And the issue you brought up about pre-qualifying firms. That's one of the questions related to it that's on page 77. Question that I received from one of our registrants, particular jurisdiction that followed that process. They evaluated to pre-qualify firms for participation in the RFP process, and then those pre-qualified proposers submitted formal proposals, including fees for consideration. Read the statute, it seems, I think the intended methodology is that they will select one firm and then negotiate with that one firm, and if that doesn't work out, they go to the next most qualified. Yeah, but that's not the procedure that's being followed universally. I guess to save time, they're pre-qualifying firms and using that method instead.
Violation of the intent of the law. Clearly, in accordance with TCA 124106A2, once the public body, client, has selected the most qualified design professional / firm, it may request a fee proposal from that firm, not multiple firms, that firm.
I think when you cross that point, you're only dealing with one particular firm. You're not raising prices. Right? For example, we have a group of qualified architects and engineers actually in our pool. And if we got a certain job we want, we select that. Let's say ABC, all three companies. We'll select with this group of what we might give to company A now and then company B later on. We kind of move them around. And we don't just say get A, B, C, C, which one's the best price, and no, we don't do that. That's
Right.
illegal.
Right. You pick the most qualified firm, and then you
Negotiate directly with them,
which is what
on
most
a
people
retained
do.
basis. Yeah.
I think anything other than that would be a violation of the intent of this law.
How does this apply to TVA? TVA is federal government, isn't it? They do hire
Quasi-government. I mean,
engineer.
they're headed by a board.
Huh? Say again?
They take qualification statements, and then they pre-qualify you. Determine what your qualifications are. You may be qualified to do an outside of the fence office building, or you may be inside the fence working on a qualifications, and then they select you, and then you negotiate your fee.
But one firm, not multiple firms, then negotiate fees with multiple firms. They select one firm and negotiate fees with one firm.
Yeah, but you're on a pre-qualified list, and then based on what you're good at, they pick you. You know, if you're a space planner, then they've got a list of space planners. You know, or if you're an office building designer, they've got a list of office building designers that are qualified, and they do like you, Philip. Okay, you do this project, you do that project.
Mm-hmm.
That's how my experience with them has been.
That's what we do on our buildings.
But since, of course, the second point, okay, that's fine, but the first point still goes back to the registrant or somebody that is not. And then there's the other case that came across my desk the other day, where you have a architectural firm that was selected by the State Building Commission to do something. And they were selected, generally, then they don't have a civil or survey firm. They just have, that's a certain addition. So then you've got an agency. I am having to do I'm doing a competitive bid to an architectural firm for something that's a State Building Commission project. That seems to me to be a little goofy as well. Those are my concerns. That may be a one-off type thing. It may be something, but that's not consistent with what I think we're trying to do here. And I'm just,
Or in the survey services or civil?
Civil
Okay.
services.
That's not unusual, because the way the fee is set up is civil is typically included. trying to get, the best package you can get. So you can make money. The state
Is it included? It's not additional services?
surveying and testing and all that.
Civil.
Typically it will be.
If that is
Unless it's identified as an additional service.
If it's included, then it's an easy answer. It's like projects that you submit on, the architect is a prime, they have to list their mechanical, electrical.
But evidently they didn't because they were asking other civil firms to do.
You only have to do
portions
that
of
after
it.
you're selected.
Right.
They give you the job, basically.
What agency?
And any of the state agencies, the
The Board of
TBR, UT, RPA.
Board of Regents and UT, you send a letter of interest. If you're interested in a job, you have to list your sub-consultants
Right.
on the letter of interest.
But when they send you agreement, they get you to list who they are. Ever back check to see if that was who you originally put on your letter of intent. Right.
If they thought about it and wanted to, they could check.
Suppose in theory that since this is enacted, if somebody did that, you could enter a formal complaint.
Happened before, in our cases, where we had registered as a complaint. Court of Appeal to listen to the complaint.
Well, Candy pointed out that, just to remind you that the state's not covered by the QBS law, just local governments. This particular statute only applies to local.
The local muni, the muni.
I think this is going to require a pretty substantial education process because many of them, from one of the agencies that they like and trust, is going to have to really sit down and explain that to them.
I guess
A simple solution for like say a local school project or something like that would be if they just said, here's the fee. And if you're
That wouldn't be qualification-based selection.
No, they would select you on qualification, but the fee's already set.
It still wouldn't necessarily be qualification-based selection. There would be
Because everybody getting the same
There would
fee.
be a caveat associated with that. Based that we're dictating what your fee's going to be. We're not giving.
They are in that you could not submit if you don't like it.
But that's pretty common. I mean, again, Board of Regents has their form.
State does do that. Yeah.
And so the fee is not a part of the selection at all. They're selecting totally on quality because you never talk about the fee. It's set.
Formula.
Again, still go back to the first point that I don't know that we've talked about. You have, especially with the proliferation of construction builds, you have contractors, for instance, that hire engineers. They're not a registrant. They can come in and do whatever they want to do the work, to do the civil part or the other parts that they may have engineers to do. And again, they're work for them. So we all could then be placed at a very competitive disadvantage
Local public works related
They work for
project. Doesn't matter. If they submit a fee and it's a competitive public works project, then they're in violation of the law.
but we said that the registrant is. But even though they work for him, they're not under the same.
They're still violating. Other consultants submitting fees, then they violate the law.
Registered or the company?
Registrant would have too.
Yeah, then so if I'm the principal
Or
of
it's
the
the
company, you think
registrant's,
that
it would be the registrant's responsibility to report that.
That is if that's a law,
Only
Yeah.
for unlicensed practice. Yeah, not for violations of rules of professional conduct. They're not
They're
bound
wrong.
by those rules.
okay.
Well, I understand the intent is to educate our registrants, but the local government really pay attention to what. The good news is about most local government, the city engineers are professional engineers anyway. Smaller county may not have it.
Memphis, but if you leave the urban Memphis.
The point, I mean, we send it to them, they don't have to follow because they are not registered. Why should he follow? So it is the bearing, it is, the burden is on the registrant to make sure we comply with the law now.
And you're taking, really, it's county mayors and city mayors. They're the ones, that's what I was saying earlier, they're the ones that really need to be educated about.
You might try to educate them about how much of those.
No, it shouldn't be us. That's what I was saying. The Tennessee Municipal League or Tennessee County Services Association, agencies that represent every city and every county in the state, they're the ones that should help them understand these.
Out there, it's happening, and I think the steps that y'all have made is good. Rubber stamping design.
It got built by a developer.
Yeah,
By
got built by the
contractors,
developer.
I mean, trust me, if you, the design profession, don't want to do it, somebody else will do it. Okay? They push hard enough, they'll get the answer. But I think we digress too much into the. But at least I think the discussion's been well thought of. We need to at least educate the registrant in my mind, and then professionally we have to do our due diligence. We see somebody doing that, it is our job to call on them and report them. I think that would be a first step to doing it.
Again, what I said before, I just think that there's a potential. There's people that are going to find ways around this that we.
All of us see, and we've at least partially accomplished our mission. Better than nothing.
Are y'all okay with the language of the notice and the form letter? Or you're okay with utilizing that?
Need a motion to accept? Do you need the motion?
It'd be better to, at least for the notice especially.
You're writing on behalf of the board.
Yeah.
Our executive director has recommended the letter to the registrant. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone say no? Okay, all in favor, so it's motion carries.
I would volunteer to help you by going to both Tennessee Municipal League and Tennessee County talk to them and help them understand what this is.
Come to city Memphis for our city council meeting.
Also, the questions related to QBS on page, what page is that, 77? My understanding from your previous discussion, number 1, your answer would be no, that the pre-qualification process is not in compliance with the law. Rule, in your view, okay. Second question, which hasn't been discussed, which I was asked recently, is it unethical for one firm or registrant to sit in on a proposal interview for another firm registrant, a competitor? Would this be a violation of the rules of professional conduct? I don't see that it would violate a specific rule, but
I think it would be unprofessional.
yeah.
I was
On that job, yeah, that was the question.
Isn't that a conflict of interest? I mean, if you're...
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's a public forum. When you go in and make a presentation, everybody's entitled to sit in there.
I see what you're saying.
But to
Gotcha.
me, and I agree with you, John, that I don't. It's just extremely unprofessional for one firm to do that.
years ago after I left the base and I was starting up my own practice, I got caught in a situation like that for a local government, and I submitted myself and I had consulting engineers. We put together a proposal, and when I went for the interview, there was one gentleman sitting in the back of the room who heard everything, and I knew he was an architect that had been doing work for this one particular municipality. So, the one thing I could determine is that he's sitting there taking notes on what he left out of his. We didn't get it, but I know that gentleman ended up getting the project, and it's not only highly unethical, but I think it would be a violation of professional conduct.
I would think it depends on what, if your firm, let's say they shortlist it to 3 firms, and you may have some particular expertise and they want you to act something on a technical nature and you're already out of the game, that might be one instance. But if you're still in the game, then I think it's...
I was in the game at that time.
I still think that's terribly unethical. But if you've been shortlisted and they say, hey, we know you've done a couple of these, we want to make sure that's the right questions, can you just kind of help lead us through some of that? I'm not sure that would... Because we are asked as professionals to do that. Especially for some of these people that have never been through some things. Most of it's...
I mean, if people want to find information, they'll find it, especially when you do public setting like that. Anything else on the electronic
That gives me the information I need. All right.
Next, we have changes to continuing education procedure. Susan?
Skipped one.
Oh, electronic, I'm sorry. It's getting hot in here, that's why.
Yeah, this is just a couple of questions that I've received recently. It's also an issue that Ricky Bursai and I discussed a little bit as well. One issue is the acceptability of locked PDFs. Seems like I've had that question quite a bit lately, especially in light of the new language that was adopted, took effect back in March. Some concern about whether a stamped, sealed document that's transmitted electronically as a locked PDF, if that complies with the requirements of the rules. Is it considered a secure document? It can't be altered, of course, if it's locked with the password, but
Say that again, John?
in many cases, registrants are transmitting their documents, say to the state fire marshal or whoever, as a locked PDF so that it can't be altered.
One of the tabs.
Actually, we have, I don't think they were passed out, or they wanted before the meeting. Let me pass these. No, you can actually keep these. These will be, it may not have your name on it, but you can.
Oops.
Begins on page 38, the paragraph 8 of Rule 0120.02.08. Those are the requirements for electronically generated seals, and signatures, and dates of signature.
I'll draw you a diagram.
I guess the issue is a locked PDF. Does that have an electronic authentication process attached to it?
I don't think it does, because I don't think it creates a unique identification mechanism.
If it's locked, PDF document can't be locked and secured with a unique password. So unless you have that, you can't pull that up and unlock it and then be able to electronically alter that through various different means. And then, if that's unique, that's one safeguard, but they're looking for another identification marker on there. Is that what you're trying to say, John?
Talking about locked, being that last clause that says
That's part of the issue too, right?
that takes some software, and is that available?
I mean,
Wouldn't they have to know your, would they have?
Just don't know if that's available. Any software is made that will.
There's a software called Bluebeam that you can modify any PDF. Now, whether or not it's locked is another story, because I haven't had to use one that way. But I can mark it up, I can redline it, I can add stuff, I can erase stuff.
I know anybody under the
Yeah.
age of 25 knows how to alter PDF.
Thank you.
I know that. What I don't know is that if you go over here and change this part of the drawing, this is saying your signature is supposed to be taken off of the seal. That takes a program. Does anybody make such a program or sell such a program?
Well, I mean, on documents, they do. Obviously, you can, if you put your stamp and a signature, that document's got your stamp and a unique identifier underneath it, and then if anybody makes a change to it, puts a big red X through it, or it erases your stamp, or it does something to it so you know it's not done. I don't know in the case of a locked PDF, if you can't go change a and to or within that document, if your signature still looks like it has before. I would suspect not, but I don't know that to be true or not.
Since I'm somewhat knowledgeable about Adobe Acrobat, I know that I can go in there on a document and I can go in there and put a password in there and it locks it. And unless you know exactly what that password is, you cannot unlock it and then alter it at all. So if somebody knew that password and unlocked it, and my seal and signature on there, then they could delete that off and use that elsewhere. But they have to know that itself. And then, the other part of that is, anytime the file has been modified, you'll see that in there too, depending on which looking, because you can see when a document's been created, modified very easily as well.
That's this question. You can see it on the screen, but if you were to go print it out, could you see it on what you printed out?
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, in my mind, why are we open? The question is it acceptable to lock PDF? The simple answer in my mind, any document that you want to protect, that you should lock it.
Yeah.
But
right.
it's nothing to do with how we control our seal. Don't let them mislead us, okay?
Well, unless you're using your seal to lock the PDF. Unless you're using your seal to say a document that you have to
Right.
stamp and seal.
And I think we have a procedure here that says that if it's unique, at the end of the day, if we test through this four points here, and we can meet all these conditions, I think. But the question is not try to answer whether is it acceptable to lock PDF. I think we need to go back. To me, in my mind, when you put a seal and you see it locked, it means that's final and done. And then if you want to change, then you will have to reseal it, relock it. Is that not the way to look at it?
Well, I don't know. I just don't know how long.
I would say, Philip, that's exactly right. That's the intent. That way, only the design professional can. Anybody under the age of 25 can probably figure out a way to unlock.
Oh yeah, I mean, if people really want to get into a suit, they will get into it.
But the reality of that is, though, you've got that original still. That's your copy, that you own. That
like me, you send a letter and then you send a letter in a PDF format. Anybody has a professional version, they can download your PDF format, commit back to work, to text, and then to Word, and then they make all the changes, resave it back to PDF, send it out. So that doesn't guarantee that you will not be. Nobody will make modifications. So it's more of a feature of a PDF, Adobe, as opposed to really the question about do you accept. The answer is, as long as you are in control of your seal, and if you're going to let somebody use the seal, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it is your job to look after the seal. It's like
my 30,000-foot question to you is, why would somebody have an objection to an engineer or an architect or landscape?
Heard anybody object to it. It's just they're not sure if it complies with the current rule.
This is just another way that we can go do documents. I mean, we had a situation where we could go import our stamp from a JPEG type file and insert your signature from a JPEG file. That's also one of the ways that you can do it. So they're, to me, locked. As long as you put your stamp on it, do whatever. I don't know what difference it makes. Because it's one of the methods that we have that says you
To protect us.
To protect, it's one of the methods. A locked PDF is no different than that.
But as
so-
long as it's sealed, what difference does it make? It's unique to the individual user. It's your seal. Capable of verification.
And the password is supposed to be unique to you unless you share your password.
I think this, it's just, we've given them 3 methods of sealing documents. That would fall under one of them if that's the way they chose to do it, and if they felt comfortable that that protects.
It's an interesting question that I received, the issue of text and sealed reports being lifted out of the report and inserted into other documents.
I don't know about everybody else, but we put a copyright stamp on all of our plans and specifications.
We're playing with what the rules say. Our rules is follow our rules, guidelines, and you're going to leave all this text. By the time you do that, why not just put your own seal in there and be done with it?
Because some of them don't have seal. Pay for it one time and then try to universally apply it to a lot of different things.
We dealt with this situation about, sounds like a plain stamping kind of technique here. Just only electronically use.
Well, with Bluebeam, you can copy whatever you want and paste it somewhere else on the drawing. So not having had locked ones that I'm aware of sent to me to mark up and redline, we're going to do a little test and see if I can take one of his documents and use Bluebeam and mark it up with it being locked.
Even if you could, he still has his original.
Right.
So the comparison between what he has on his file and whatever you do to mark it up or demonstrable evidence that you made a change to it that you weren't entitled to, especially if it's still got his seal on it.
Well, I guess my concern is being able to take his seal and put it on something else, if I can copy paste it. See, that's my thought, which would not be the right thing to do, but
Well, but here's the reality. That could have gone on when we did wet stamping stuff.
Right.
So I mean, if somebody's going to cheat that way, they're just going to cheat that way. And you can so this copy and pasting thing. If somebody's going to copy and paste it, what keeps them from just either typing if it's text or scanning it and digit or whatever they end up doing? If they're intent on breaking the rule, they're going to. This just gives us another mechanism to stamp and seal a set of drawings that gets us a little further away from the old digitized wet stamp stuff that I think is actually easier to go.
In answer to this second part of the question, John, is it permissible for clients to lift text out of documents? I'd say no, because that has a potential for violating the design intent, and it may not be applicable to whatever design or text they're trying to apply it to.
As to whether that would be a violation of our rules,
Technical note before, geotechnical report, and I wanted to put it on the.
no private conversations, please.
I just want to know where I get a complaint form to file.
Okay, I guess John.
I just said it would have hurt your feelings. I didn't tell you needed to file a complaint.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about hurting.
I think John has a question.
Well, I mean, we can say no in answer to that, but if they ask, well, what can we do if that happens? Let's say if a non-registered client does that to my report, I don't see that we can take any action against the client for doing that. I mean, it may be
practicing without a license.
Well,
I mean, just like unlicensed. Or what happened if your report falling into another registered profession? All he did or she did was cut and paste a document. If I put a report out there and somebody take my work and cut and paste, cause plagiarizing. in school, they'll fire you for that. You never come back to school anymore. So
I think we're swatting at gnats a little bit here. I mean, there's some things that we do this with that help to make the drawings. It's going to copy and paste something. They've got a lot of different ways to do it.
Well, sure, but if they, I guess what somebody's, evidently this has happened to somebody, and they're asking a question, is it a violation? And John's asking us, do we perceive that it's a violation? And our answer should be, if they've stolen an engineering design or opinion.
They need to ask the question better.
I think they need
Copy
written
and pasting
permission
is
to
not in and of itself
reuse the
a thing.
information.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's
they
how
can
you
always,
take the copy
just
and
like a
paste
textbook.
what you
They
need.
say that nothing has been unless it's written
That's got all
consent.
the
Yeah.
difference in the world to do with.
John, you got enough to reply back? Oh, he's still dancing.
City of Knoxville's got standards. I copy and paste them all the time.
You did something, you didn't do it.
Not very well, because they redline them when they send them back to me.
But that's, I mean, it's in the public domain and intended for use by an engineer.
I understand, but
Some of this may
that's not the way that question.
And again, that's applicable to the job that you're doing. What they're asking is, if this may not be applicable to the job that they're doing,
This is from a report done by my.
You probably
There's nothing wrong with that, is there?
but if they take that, like say for example, they've got some school design out there. Other school or a different development, then yeah, it could.
It all gets back to an individual case and how it's done, because there are times when it's okay to lift text from a report and put it somewhere else, and there's times it's
But
not.
their question is, can we ever copy and paste? Well, heck, yeah.
Yes.
So, depends on what your intent, what
That's
you're
the right
using
answer.
for.
It
That's-
depends.
that's-
I'm going to pull up the original email that asked the question. I don't think it's really detailed, but see if that has any additional details.
We need more information about the specific event or incident.
Pulling up the email.
Yeah, it's.
Can we
had to do some updates. So
can we move on to the change in continuing education?
yes, please do. Starts on page 78 on your iPads, and this is something I think that noted that needed to be updated to add the Interior Design Continuing Education Council.
The NCIDQ has stopped having a registry for continuing education courses, and they have formed a new organization, the IDCEC, to do that. That organization is also certifying the CEU courses, assigning them numbers, and determining if they're health, safety, and welfare. And then there's a central clearinghouse where all those are registered. And so they're just asking that we adopt the use of a central continuing education registry so that your interior designers may easily report and manage their continuing education activity. If you're a member of ASID, IIDA, or IDC, you can create an account for free. If you're not a member of those, it's $5 per recording of the CEU. It used to be $12 with NCIDQ, so they're managing it at a less cost per course. But I think what's great is when I see a continuing education audit and I've got their name and their number, they've already reviewed the course and determined if it's health, safety, and welfare or not. So that takes a lot of time off of me to review. So I make a motion that we adopt the change to the new registry program for continuing education for interior designers.
Second.
Discussion? No. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. John, is the email up? If not, I'm going to move on to the next one.
Okay, I think I got it here. Let's see here.
Ooh, you can, I guess you could send
I
a,
think it was just a phone call that I received where they were concerned about that.
phone call answer is no. And to see, depends. It's a case-by-case basis. I mean, what we really, the board doesn't want to do is give them an answer, and then later on they can use all this answer and piece it into a story. God told me so.
Yeah.
No, the board is not in any position to provide him individual counseling. He needs to seek his own professional counseling if he needs to. But
Add one thing?
yeah,
On page 78, we'll need to remove CDIQ as well because they're not going to be monitoring the continuing education, John. So it's just going to be the IDCEC.
Well, I left them on there because I think they're maintaining their records for a certain period of time.
Over the end of this year, so.
I left it on there.
Okay.
But,
okay, you good?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next is the revision to the grant guideline. I think, who is the chair for this committee? Is that you? Yeah. You want to talk about it? I think we need to add we need to revise the policy to include the private institution, right?
Right.
So that means the $300,000 will be spread. Hold on.
We already modified it to indicate that the grant amount is.
Starts on page 80. Basically, it modifies it to strike where it says public institution to just say institution of higher education. Also, it allows them to use the funds to cover the cost of exam fees, so they could use it, say, to fund the cost of the fundamentals of engineering exam for their students. And then it adds the private institutions that are eligible for the grant funds due to having accredited programs, which would be Christian Brothers, Lipscomb, Union, and Vanderbilt for engineering. University of Memphis has been added for architecture because they are now accredited, which actually that should have been an announcement at the beginning of the meeting that their program is now fully accredited. They received notification earlier this year. And for interior design, it adds the International Academy of Design and Technology, which you may not have heard of. They're here in Nashville. They've only been here a few years. It's a fairly new school. O'Moore College of Design in Franklin, and Watkins College of Art, Design, and Film, which is also based here in Nashville. That's really it. I mean, you've got the changes highlighted.
Yeah, poem
here.
80.
Those are the main
80,
changes.
81, and 82. I guess
I've
Motion.
reviewed, I did review this, and I agree with the amendments.
I would move that we accept the amendments as directed,
a motion for that? Do I have a second? Do we have more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're good. So John, you can tell the private institution they can have a party now. They're happy.
Right.
I think the other thing I was thinking, just a note for University of Memphis, and David is still in the room here, but David has a big part in helping the architecture program there. I know he used a lot of his personal time to go talk to them, make sure they're in that program. So David, all your hard work pays off, but I can only pay you that much, 0 times 0. Good job, David. Okay, 2014 legislative proposal, John?
Yes. Do what? Okay. Yeah, Rob and I worked on these. Usually in the past, we've submitted our proposals much later in the year, around August, right, I think is when we've been doing it.
Way early.
Yeah, this year it's much earlier, as was noted in our society reports. The legislature's trying to adjourn earlier, so everything's kind of moved up, but we're having to submit the proposals at the beginning of the summer now. So there are 4 proposals that we submitted for the department's consideration to put into the governor's legislative package this year. These are based on discussions the board has held in the past, proposals that we've submitted previously. First is relative to retention of credit for any parts of the architect and landscape architect registration exams passed. As you'll recall, we talked about this at the October meeting last year. Right now, the statute says that architect and landscape architect candidates retain credit for any parts of the exam passed for an indefinite period of time. And your conclusion at the October meeting was that you would prefer that be amended to where that would exams would only be valid for the period of time designated by the national councils, by their policies and their procedures. Like for NCARB, they're only valid for 5 years. There's a 5-year rolling clock for exam results. And for CLARB, I found out recently, they don't have a rolling clock as NCARB does, but they have a policy they will not accept exam results obtained prior to 1991, which is when they changed from the UNE to the LARE. So a big difference in the structure of the exam at that time. So they do have a policy on that, and we probably have some old candidates that did pass sections of the exam prior to 1991 that could still potentially reapply with us. So basically this would adopt whatever policies the national councils have in place by amending the statute. That would take effect within after 3 years in order to give them time to complete any remaining exam sections. I think that was the time you came up with at the October meeting. You suggested 3 years for that. Second one is... That one was rejected, right, Rob, the first one?
This one was not selected for the governor's package.
That one, yeah, we'll probably resubmit that one in the future, but as for now, that has not been accepted to be pursued. The second one is relative to licensure of landscape architects. That would basically allow us to evaluate non-accredited landscape architecture degrees to determine if they're substantially equivalent accredited program.
Recommending that.
Yeah, that goes back 2 or 3 years ago. It's been some, and actually I remember I met with Nathan several years ago about that to see if ASLA would be interested in pursuing that.
And they were not interested in pursuing it. I don't think we want to pursue it.
Well, I had discussed it with you subsequent to that, and you had said that you were still interested in that.
I think so.
Yeah, that one the department was okay with pursuing that. Now, as to whether it makes it into the governor's package or not, that's another issue. Yeah. But we have discussed that before in the board. I think we discussed it at the October meeting. I can go back and check the minutes on that, but I think we did.
All it does is just allow the board to evaluate non-accredited degrees. Yeah. Or before that was just too bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it would require rulemaking, so you could just choose to not make a rule change.
It authorizes us to make a rule change if...
Yeah. Okay. It has to be approved by the board.
You're not precluded just because it's not accredited anymore.
Right.
But you can set guidelines that you would like to see in that curricula or whatever.
What would the reasoning be for not pursuing that? I have trouble understanding what the reasoning is.
Just because of all of the different programs around the world that you would have to evaluate, making it comparable.
We'd have to find a qualified individual to perform the evaluations, just as we've done with the other professions.
Yeah. A foreign degree. Then a local degree, we use Dr. Smith. Next.
The third one is regarding denial, suspension, or revocation of a license. And that just gives us specific authority to deny for conviction of a felony. That's not currently in the list. It is covered by, we think, by good character and repute, but we want it to be in the statute to specifically say that. And also it amends that requirement to immediately notify the Secretary of State of any revocations, suspensions, etc.
That one was picked up. Felony is a grounds for felony. It's not going to be specific about anything, just to make it cleaner. Also, we
Does that make it mandatory denial, or is it subjective denial?
didn't change the language of it being discretionary or not. It says the board may. Adds that as something additional to, having been. We rewrote the language about having to immediately identify the Secretary of State. Final action. So if we issued a consent order, it went to a formal hearing, the board disciplined. Absolute final formal disciplinary actions will be reported to the national appropriate for whatever discipline it is instead of every. I think the law. Here would be the national councils.
Right. And the last one is about the approval process for engineering exam candidates. That would essentially allow us to adopt that automatic method that the committee favored, where they would apply with us after they pass the exam. Now, it does remove the language about them qualifying as a senior student, but that does not preclude them from sitting. I suspect that's going to create a lot of confusion when that bill's discussed, if assuming that it makes it to stated status of a bill, which is a big assumption. But it takes out the senior student language, but it does not preclude them from sitting while they're a student. They can sit for the exam anytime. They just can't be certified until they've graduated and passed the exam. So they can still sit anytime they choose. They could sit while they're a junior, potentially.
How long is the score?
There's no expiration for the score on those. There's no rolling clock or anything like that.
But if they take it too early, it's to their disadvantage to take it too early.
Those are the 4 proposals we submitted. And as far as the landscape architecture one, we could still withdraw it, couldn't we?
Yeah.
It hasn't been submitted to the governor's office yet.
The only step
I think
taken
it wouldn't be
is-
a problem to do that.
The way I understand it is, we're all said, okay, submit your wish list. After that, we're allowed, I don't know how many bills, each department's allowed a certain number of bills, those to get down to the proper number. And if you remember, this department also has in the same department, so no guarantee that these will actually finally make it out, but they haven't been cut yet, so we might want to wait and see if it even makes it out.
Still very preliminary. Sorry? Leave it in for now? Yeah. Okay.
You don't need a motion from us, it's just informing us this for.
Yeah, it's really just informing you, because these are all things the board's discussed previously. Now, in some cases, it may have been 2 or 3 years ago, so.
I do need the board to stay for 30 seconds right after the adjourn for the meeting to handle one unofficial matter. Coming to the last item here, fixing to hand over my big hammer to our friend here.
And one last thing, we need the engineering committee, right, to talk about one.
We'll do that. We'll do that after the 30 seconds. So we'll do that. Say, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second today? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. So, is it off the record?
Thank you, Candy.
Thank. Okay, hold on. Let her cut it off.
Yeah, it does.